Camber House.
Give me my respect.
Welcome to Camber House.
Now I'm rocking with the best.
Join your hosts, Jeremy and James, as they take an unfiltered and uncensored look at the car industry and motorsport across the globe.
You can't find the right tool in this garage, you don't belong near a car.
Welcome to the home of car culture.
Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Camber House podcast, the home of car culture in Barbados and the Caribbean. And I'm your co-host, James, joined by my other co-host, the all gas, no brakes, Mr. Jeremy Foster. And today we are proud to welcome a man that needs no introduction, although we're going to give him one. One of the unsung heroes in rallying in Barbados. This man has been involved in motorsport for over 30 years, both competing as well as on the organizational side. He's certainly responsible for growing the sport in Barbados. The rally director, I could say, of Rally Barbados.
Chief bottle washer.
Cook and bottle washer. Boys and girls, strap in. Welcome, Mr. Neil Barnard. Barnard. Neil, how you doing?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for taking your time, man. Sure. Should be a good chat.
Absolute pleasure to have you. How's coronavirus been for you, and what's going on?
Hopefully you haven't had any experience with it.
No, definitely not. That's a very wide-ranging question.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody, the first couple of weeks was everything just went sideways, and it was a bit mad trying to find your feet and figure out what was going to happen next, which we don't know what's going to happen next, but I guess things have stabilized here on the island for sure.
Okay, perfect. So I guess, we'll take it from the beginning.
Sure.
How did you first get involved in motorsport from back in the day? Give me a rundown.
Okay, so I'm afraid that I didn't really have a lot of choice. I was born into this. My grandfather was a founding member of the Barbados Rally Club, so in the 50s, and he competed right through the 50s into the 60s, and then was instrumental in overseeing events at Bushy Park in its infancy in the early 70s. Both my parents were involved in racing and rallying. My dad used to write off a considerable amount of cars. We used to live in St. Vincent. Moved here, met my mother through rallying.
Okay.
And both of them actually competed. He competed in the early 70s in rallying, and then both of them raced at Bushy Park briefly. Okay. I think he raced a clubman that belonged to my mother and wrote that off. A mini clubman. And then they both took a break on the back of the oil crisis in the 70s and came back into it more when I could remember.
Okay.
My earliest memory is actually at Bushy Park on the roof of the clubhouse in 1974. That's my earliest childhood memory. I kid you not. Wow. But they came back in the early 80s. My dad got back into rallying through navigation. And my mum later on in the 80s, I actually bought a car and she drove it in competition for a while in the late 80s. So I no escaping it for me. I actually did my first rally as a navigator for my grandfather when I was 14. So that'd be 1983.
That was back in the days when there was very few rules.
Exactly.
Throw a 14-year-old in past just so you can go out.
Yeah. Well, it was what you used to call a rabbits and hares rally, which was a novice rally. You used to have one route for the novices and one route for the quote-unquote professionals. But these in the days of road rallying, so there was no speed-based against the clock all stage rallying.
Right. This is following directions that are
exactly.
Yeah,
so the routes are known, which we still do today. We call them safaris.
Right.
Which is struggling a little bit at the moment, but went through a real boom period in the 90s.
This is the Mud Dogs.
Early 2000 exactly, which
right.
we rebranded the Mud Dogs.
Yeah.
This is the club. So that was very big in the 80s, huge. And they used to have special stages built into those events. So you used to do like 2 or 3 hours of route, tulip route. You didn't know where you were going. You're trying to find a way. There were time checks. And then all of a sudden you'd arrive on the start of a closed road. And it was like, okay, the next 2 kilometers is against the clock. And off you go. And there used to be guys that used to enter the rallies just to do them. So they used to do pretty rubbish during the other parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when they get to the stages, used to. So people like Roger Skeet, he used to actually enter, like, in the early days, his Lancer GSR and then the Peugeot 205 in these navigational rallies. The car would be horrendous to drive for 14 hours straight.
Yeah.
I mean, horrendous.
Yeah.
But you would just do it so that you have
those
couple of special stages.
Yeah.
I mean, and then from there, it transformed into or moved into all stage rallying. And that was kind of on the back at the same time of the resurgence of Bushy Park, which then shut. And it was opened back up with huge backing by Automotive Art.
When would this have been?
90s. That's early 90s.
90s, because this is what I remember now. You're getting into a period that I remember, early days, Bushy Park, Swifts and Starlets, Andrew Malou, Brian Gill, Richard Roy, those boys.
Correct.
And those are my absolute, your childhood memories on the roof of Bushy Park, and mine is somewhere in that clubhouse in Bushy Park looking at a fluorescent Starlet driven by Richard Roy in the 90s. I mean, we talked about that in one of our other episodes. Those were the good old days, man.
Those were amazing days, because you had this situation whereby the guys eventually developed their cars for racing at Bushy Park in that 2 or 3 year very huge bright spot. But they were still using those cars to do stage rallying, which is what had
Which is a bit weird, right? I mean, I can't
mad.
imagine driving. I mean, I remember Andrew Malalou telling me his Swift at the time, his GTI Swift that he drove at Bushy Park, had 10-inch slicks on it, and I can't imagine on a track. That's one thing. And then, but I can't imagine what that would have been like to drive on a special stage.
Completely mental. I mean,
car would be tracking all over
the road. I mean, you're just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the kind of holdover from that is Roger Skeet's current car, his Peugeot.
Yes.
Which, if you have a conversation with Dane about trying to hang on
you
to
can
that,
see it.
It's
and that's a beast. And I mean, that's
fighting for dear life with that thing.
Yeah, and that's even more modern technology than what they would have had as far as like differentials is concerned and whatnot.
That's a professionally built rally car.
Yeah.
That's a Maxi, right?
Yeah.
It's a 306.
It's a handful though.
But
it is
a handful, particularly on our roads. Narrow, really uneven. Uneven is probably being kind. But yeah, huge handful. So yeah, you can imagine back in the early 90s, these guys are driving these cars, which are essentially two-wheel drive specials built for Bushy Park racing on stage rallying.
Yeah.
So I had gone away to university, came back here, early 90s, and then I actually got into competing myself.
Good. I'm glad you got there because I have a memory of you, but I want to go through some of the. So what you got into first? What was your first competition car?
Suzuki Forza GTI, plain white. Bought it from Spencer Hutchinson's brother, Jerry the Coffin Hutchinson.
That's a nickname.
The coffee.
The
coffin.
The coffin.
And
that's a nickname.
He's still alive, right?
I think it cost me about $14,000. I didn't have a cent to my name. I borrowed the money from my grandfather, who I then took about 10 years to pay back.
Yeah.
I think I had about whatever it is, $150 a month.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he was happy to give it to you because
he wasn't giving it to me. Not gonna happen.
Right.
Yeah. No,
but you got a racing car.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, absolutely. So in those days, you didn't actually have to have. They were just kind of implementing things like proper safety regulations, stuff like that. So I think when I first drove it, it didn't have a cage in it. Then I put in a bolting cage. Then actually Greg Cozier and his team of guys up at Hopewell, this is mid-90s now, they helped me a lot. There's a guy up there called French, and he put in the cage eventually, which was very fortunate, because only a few years later, I turned it over in an event up in Diamond Corner.
Right, so you were glad it had a proper cage when that happened.
Definitely the exuberance outstripped the capability, and over, upside down in a cane ground.
Okay.
So listen, you had the...
You're into bikes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that day ended bad because after rolling that car, the wrecker came and the wrecker brought a sidekick with him, so I couldn't fit in the cab with the car and the wrecker.
Right.
And the only person to give me a drop home, you're gonna funny laugh at this, was Scott Davis. You know Scott?
I don't know.
Don't worry about it. He's a different individual than when he was 30 years ago, and all he came to the event in was on a Ninja. Kawasaki Ninja.
Yeah.
So having been in an accident, I then had to get on the back of this motorcycle to go home, and it rained.
Oh, nothing worse.
Yeah, bad.
Nothing
Very
worse.
bad. Yeah, anyway. Sorry.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Neil, you would always, you talk about your first car. Did you want to track it at Bushy Park, or it was primarily for rally was what you wanted to do?
Anything.
It didn't matter. You did both?
Absolutely. So I raced at Bushy Park in what was a highly competitive class in those days, which now would be our equivalent of Clubman, which was a kind of a standard class.
Yeah.
So we changed the suspension in the car, put in proper seats, roll cage, so on and so forth, had to have a extinguisher, whatnot. But the class was really competitive. So in those days, Jeff Knoll had one, exactly like that. Eddie Corbin eventually bought his. Peter Thompson had one. This is Thompson that's come back running.
Yes.
Compete now, right? Mark and so on, right? And it was about 4 or 5 of us in that class, essentially with identical cars. So it was highly competitive.
That's good racing.
The car doesn't weigh anything. I mean, those original Forces weigh 800 kilos.
Yeah.
So it was good. And at the same time, besides the driving, I had actually, to answer your earlier question, anything, I was up for anything. So I actually ended up co-driving as well in overseas events. That's another story.
How did you get involved in that?
Again, because I was actually navigating as well for anyone who would have me in a car in the road events, so the safari type events. So I did rallies with Wayne King, Wayne Archer, who's competing now. I navigated for him.
In the BMW, right?
Correct.
He has now.
At the time, he had a Datsun 120Y. So anything was going, I was in, whether it was on the left-hand seat or the right-hand seat or whatever.
You didn't care. You just
I
wanted
can
to be
relate
in
to
it.
that, man. Just want to be in something fast and get
Absolutely.
that adrenaline.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking about it because it's like once you get a taste of that, you know, you start to almost build up a tolerance, and then things that perhaps would give other people adrenaline doesn't quite match up to or have the same response in you as it would. I mean, there's nothing quite like sitting in a rally car at a start line, giving that last tug on the harness, watching that clock tick to 0, and then for the next 2 to 3, 4, whatever minutes, it is yeah. I mean, obviously there's risk involved in motorsport, but there's just something that every single time you got those butterflies, you get those goosebumps,
100%.
and then it is just nothing quite does it. I mean, I guess the same on track. Obviously, personally, the experience has been in rallying, but track racing, I'm sure, having cars so close to one another.
Track racing is mad.
just as
I mean, it's
exciting.
completely mental. I mean, when I did it up there, it's actually quite a different experience, because obviously you're so focused in rallying on what you're doing, whether you're sitting in the co-driver's seat or driving itself, and there's not much else that's going on.
No.
On the track, obviously you're studying what you're doing, what everybody else is doing around you as well.
Yeah.
And it's nothing else enters your brain for as long as you're competing.
It's true.
Like,
Just focus.
exactly.
Yeah.
The rest of the
Total
island could be
focus.
sliding off into the sea. You're focused on what the hell is going on
It's
there
true.
around you on the track at that time.
Yeah.
I actually find that part of it quite therapeutic. That singular focus,
Yeah.
where nothing else exists for that period of time. Similarly with the navigational rallying, if you do a rally like the Safari, the June Safari, which has been going over 50 years now continuously, that rally is 36 hours. At the end of that, you feel as if you've left the planet for 36 hours. Like all you're studying is tulip diagrams and directional checks, and if you're on time or if you're not,
Yeah.
Wow.
for 36 hours.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then you sleep for 36 hours after.
Yeah, after that you're wiped out. That's it. Dog dead.
In terms of rally, Neil, when was the last time you participated in terms of actually competing? One, driving, and then I guess navigating as well, because they're two different things for you.
I think the last time I actually competed, as in drove quickly in a car against the clock, was about 7 or 8 years ago. It was just after I'd sold my last rally car, which was a Suzuki. I ended up driving basically for Simpson Motors products for a number of years. They helped me out considerably initially.
Yes,
and then I drove Opels.
You had an Ignis. I remember.
Opel,
Okay,
like
so
a
I was.
Corsa or like a
3 of them.
I
one
was
after
gonna
the other.
say my last memory of Neil, my earliest memory of Neil in a rally car was the Corsa, and for some reason it's taken me to Vaucluse.
Yeah,
But I
had a lot
remember
of
you and
success
Andrew
at
Jones
Vaucluse.
used to race
Yeah.
Corsas. You were at
Yeah.
the same time, right?
Yeah,
Both
he
of you?
actually bought my old Corsa
Right.
and destroyed it properly at Vaucluse.
He had a good little turnover
Yeah,
there.
proper
Yeah.
accident.
I remember
he was
that.
remarkably fast in that car.
Yeah.
But the last time would have been, I think after I sold the last Suzuki.
Was it the Ignis?
Yeah,
That was.
that was a strange car. It was a great idea. It didn't take off. So the idea was to build a one-make championship around this car, but the cars were quite boring to watch. They weren't to drive.
I was gonna ask
This would be
because
similar to the Swift series. So
yeah, but for rallying basically, I
so
think.
it's a okay. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
It was-
Vaucluse or
No, just everything.
An
The-
actual,
yeah.
His,
an
that
actual-
car still rallies today. What's
It
the guy's
does.
name?
It does. I can't remember his name now.
Me neither, but a blue and white Ignis
Yeah.
in Clubman.
Okay.
Yeah, in Clement
Um,
spec.
It was his.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember it, yeah.
Um,
Always a bit boring to watch, but I'm sure you're in a rally car, so it's probably less
Yeah,
boring
yeah,
inside.
yeah. To tell you the truth, it was good to drive. So I got quite adept at the whole underpowered driving an underpowered car quickly kind of concept, which which really just involves in picking lines and keeping your foot absolutely flat.
Planted.
Which, as a passenger, is a bit hair-raising because you don't really have the power to get out of any potentially hazardous situations.
Yeah, so you
kind of just hold on.
Hope for the best.
But it's quite effective because the times then end up being a bit giant killing at certain points.
Yeah.
But the last car I drove quickly was actually Barry Gale's Evo 6. He lent me it to do a car zero duty. He had it for sale. The car itself...
This is a Group A F06.
It actually was a bit more than a Group A at the time.
Okay.
And that was an astonishing experience because I'd never driven anything particularly quickly, not in competition. Outside of that I had, but not in competition. And it's, dog box, bigger turbo. So you carried 300 horsepower plus, and I took Corey Reese, who takes pictures now.
Yep.
He navigated for me.
No, Corey.
And it was all I remember was things happening very, very fast.
Much faster than the
Just
Ignis.
so fast. Like,
Yeah.
Not so much the terminal speed, just the way I had to do stuff in the car.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. I still don't know why he lent me that car.
Maybe he wanted you to buy it.
Maybe he did, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, just smile and nod.
was
So yeah,
good.
sure, I got it. Thanks.
Actually, I think before that, same car, when it was in Group N trim, we actually went to Ireland, both he and I, and we competed in the Cork 20, Cork International, which
No
was
way.
around the Irish Tarmac Championship there in that car. He shipped in England, went across, and I co-drove for him.
Wow.
That
must have been
was
an
a
experience.
wild experience.
I can imagine.
That was wild.
I can imagine. That was a rally and a
Absolutely
half
wild.
up there too, boy.
Yeah.
Those Irish guys don't play.
They're
That's a
not.
mixture of gravel and tarmac, or that's mud?
It's all tarmac.
all tarmac.
But
But
they've got that like extra grippy tarmac that has like chunks of rock in it, right? I mean, it is
Absolutely.
because you see the escorts up there and they come
And they're
down here and
just
it's two
flying.
different cars.
oh man,
Yeah.
it- funny you should mention that because of course we're overseas drivers. We have me here, but Barry was pretty well touted before the event. Matt Clark, as in Ollie and Matt Clark from Roger Clark fame, was looking after the car. So these guys they set us up and so on. We went there, and they had us actually in a pretty high position before the event. So they had us seated quite high, within the top 20, I think it was. And they had these escorts in and around us, and then there were one or two escorts that were just so top 10. I was looking at it going, what the hell? They're like
How?
a dozen WRC cars. in
How is
this
it
event.
possible?
And how are the
We-
escorts?
we found out all right.
Yeah.
On the first day when there were a few escorts behind us, and they just started climbing the field. So by stage 3,
They were,
the times were unreal. I mean, they were absolutely unreal. So yeah,
Incredible machines they got over there.
stupid.
Yeah, I love when they come down here for Rally Barbados because
Absolutely.
I mean, we got a lot of really nice 2-wheel drive cars here, but those escorts with the Millington diamonds in them and stuff are just, I mean, 300 horsepower escorts with escort WRC rear ends, paddle shit. I mean,
know.
it is just
Yeah.
insane.
I know.
They're 2-wheel drive WRC cars,
Absolutely.
basically,
Weighing
they are
a
phenomenal.
lot less.
weighing a lot less. Yeah,
Sure.
indeed.
You've done a lot. Obviously, you've traveled overseas and you've been a part of Rally here. What's the best event you've ever taken part in, or a big experience for you, whether it's international or Rally Barbados? Tell me, which is one of the biggest memories for you?
The best event I ever taken part in was, I think, 1993, which at the time was the SO Super Royal Mazda Rally in Jamaica. That was an astonishing thing. I can't even call it an event. It was an astonishing thing. 51 special stages over 3 days.
Oh my God.
51?
Yeah.
All
All
loose.
loose. All gravel.
Yeah.
Blind. So basically, I went there.
No pace, no.
No
As in
pace
nothing.
notes. Not a pace note.
No
So-
recce's.
No.
Whoa.
No. Blind event. So I went there with Alan Wilkie, and he was given a car by the local Suzuki importer, Stewart Auto Sales. And we went there and did the event. I think it was the only time my mother in particular, my parents, said, we're not sure about this decision that you're making here, particularly with, at the time, Wilkes was quick.
Quick, yeah.
I mean, quick.
And you're being given a car, a bit of not mine syndrome comes into play.
Absolutely. And I think they had 24, 25 different 4-wheel drive cars, and we're in this 2-wheel drive Swift, albeit it was modified. Had on proper Suzuki Sport suspension. It was a pretty well set up car. I think they had 9 or 10 stages on the Friday. We started Friday midday from National Stadium. By the end of Friday night, we were 5th overall.
So he was moving too.
It was nuts. And the thing about Alan, right, at the time was he doesn't remember anything. So he remembers nothing. So we would do loops of stages. So you do stages twice usually. The second round, I have a clue what he had done. And he's driving entirely on what I'm telling him. So I've got a trip in a car, and I'm literally counting down mileages to when and telling him when he has to turn. And I'm reading the notes, as in the tulip, and basically calling when the corners are coming and what's happening. And he was driving completely and entirely on what I was telling him. No quarter, no hesitation.
My goodness.
Complete confidence in what I'm telling him. Well, the first stage, I gave him a wrong note. We turned right when I went in a quarry. It's off the stage. Completely wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. After that, we kind of gained a momentum. And honestly, it was probably, you see, a memorable experience. It was the most memorable experience I've ever had in a competition car, for sure. Either driving or navigating. But it's one at the time whereby it was a mixture of everything. Complete and utter fear, like just terrified, exhaustion, just the whole gamut of everything. I mean, honestly, we could spend next hour me telling you stories about that. They threw the car away at the end. They trashed it. The whole shell. They took everything out.
Listen,
and they threw the shell away.
The
doors didn't shut. The entire shell was kinked.
I need footage of this.
We're gonna have to have you back for like a separate storytelling, like a rally storytelling session. Because to me, honestly, hearing stories about, not only from you, but just throughout the rally community, hearing stories like about motorsport, rallying in particular, from like the 80s and 90s, was just, those are the, at least in Barbados, those are the glory days.
But you know, it's incredible, because at the time, that event and rallying in Jamaica was very much the pinnacle of the region, for sure.
Jamaica.
Yeah, absolutely. The level of cars they had, the investment, the sponsor investment. They had some guys come down from the SCCA in the States who actually helped set that event. And the event itself had big names. I mean, David Llewellyn, who at the time was one of the British champions, he came across and competed. He was actually on that round.
Wow.
And one of the guys, the Japanese national champion, was competing as well. They had 2 or 3 cars on the event that were built by Rod Millen from New Zealand. I mean, it was
huge.
nuts.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we then, through Rally Barbados here, which is what it became after the Texaco International.
We're going to get to that next.
Right, yeah.
We come in.
It kind of, on the back of those events and what was happening here, and then the demise of Bushy Park, it kind of became more of a thing here, and the stage rallying kind of took off from there. Yes, those days were all like, it was all quite new, the whole stage rallying thing, and as I said, Jamaica were absolutely out front in doing what they did. But the 90s with the Texaco and the early 2000s, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have that like perspective, because that was when I was coming up around motorsport, and those are those are my early days. That's what I remember. But I mean, when you sit and hear some stories from the drivers, when you sit and like hear Roger Hill and them talk about those days, or Roger Skeet, and I mean, rallying was just different then. And those are the early days of like when the mirrors started coming out. Maybe that was a bit later, but
right. So
we'll transition to all that,
because obviously I came much later to this, but I always hear about the glory days of how big rally was. I guess maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s is when it was really taking off. Or I mean, tell me a little bit about how you said Jamaica was the biggest in the region, but obviously Barbados has taken over that, surely.
Yes.
So when did that shift take place?
So it was quite interesting, because following on from those big, and they ran them 3 years in a row, that SO Super Royal Mazda Rally in Jamaica, which was this big behemoth thing. And it was Llewellyn likened it to Safari.
And this was early 90s?
Yeah, this is like 92, 93, 94.
So Texaco All Stage in Barbados existed then?
Just after. So in and around that same time, we ran our first All Stage Rally, I think it was in 1990 or 1989.
Right.
Which was a short one-day event. And then it kind of transitioned into the Texaco mid-90s, towards the end of the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, because what happened then was the Jamaica guys, they moved towards Group A cars, and we had several Group A cars, and it kind of peaked out here in the early 2000s again with all the Group A cars, and it had a number of Jamaicans come over and compete here. Gary Gregg, Jeffrey Pannon in the early days.
Yeah, Celica.
Yeah, exactly.
This is pre-Celica or not? Yeah, dude. Yeah, he had a Celica. I remember that.
And it was. They had a lot of guys here competing in very similar machinery, which made for a very competitive, kind of sharp end to the sport. By this time, a number of the older Bushy Park specials had kind of gone to the wayside. So Roger Skeet had bought his, I think, first Escort. Cosworth. So that was kind of going on. And I think then is when it kind of peaked out. The early days of Tesco were quite remarkable in that we had these specials driving at Bushy Park and driving in stage rallying here and so on and so forth. But the event itself was, well, it still is a sprint event, but it was much more of a sprint event.
Okay.
I mean, I hear some of my stage commanders whom I'm very close now because of the organizational aspect of what I'm involved in. They tell me about moving entire crews from stage to stage. There's no looping. You finish the stage, then they move to another stage, you set that up, and then the cars came, and then they ran that. I mean, it's all a bit agricultural, really, a bit amateur.
Very much.
Whereas, like, the Jamaica event, it was like a full professional type thing.
Right.
So I think we moved towards that late 90s, early 2000s. And then it kind of went downhill. And the racing, what with Barrel taking over Bushy Park, kind of went up in ascendancy again towards the end of the 2000s.
Is this when I've seen footage of like Roger Skeet dragging the Escort up the highway? Because I've seen footage of this kind of thing.
That would have happened in parallel, correct?
Right, right.
So at the time, then racing at Bushy Park came back in a big way. And there was a lot more emphasis in terms of people building cars. The rallying was still going on, but I would have said it was not. It was still going on, and we were still running Tesco International, and then they pulled out as a sponsor, and there was a kind of a major kind of shake-up with what was going on.
What year was that? You remember?
I remember the meeting, going in and being told that, but yeah.
Right. So I think we're crossing over a little because I wanted to find out when you shifted from competing to organizing.
As soon as I sold the last rally car.
Right. So this was during this time?
2000s.
Yeah, so I would have competed all through those later years of the Tesco, the early years as well. And then, yes, when SOL really came in, and I would say that Barry Gale, my former driver, or still my driver, because I actually won a navigational championship with him. He driving, I'm in the other seat. He was really the architect of what we now know as the modern Rally
Barbados.
And he took it on like with a kind of a religious fervor. And he put in place a whole set of different systems and guidelines, and we learned from our experience in Ireland, and there were a whole set of things that we did to bring the event really up to what it is kind of international spec.
Okay.
And that then changed how people perceive, I think, the sport. It helped build on the fact that you could come here and compete. And this is all riding on the back of things like in the early days, Rally Carnival, which then stopped being Rally Carnival and just was then Rally Barbados, which the club then took over in its entirety. And we then promoted it and worked with it. And I then have seen another peak. So I think the 2015 to like 2017 to 18 was, people don't realize it, and it was probably take a few years before you look back with kind of rose-tinted goggles. But
biggest.
Huge.
Massive. No, I absolutely remember.
Huge involvement in terms of growth of the sport, spectators back to kind of numbers that we see. And people argue with me about that. Well, they'd never be out they were in the late 90s, early 2000s when the Jamaicans were coming here in the glory days of the Tesco. But the spectating has changed. Yeah. So whereas in those days, people used to go to like one spot.
Yes, very much so. Very much.
Now, and it's societal.
Yep.
4x4s, pickups.
Yes.
Before it was cars, driving to the event. Now people just go everywhere, and they go all. And I know this from being an organizer and driving through the courses just before the stages are green lit. And I'm astonished. There's no gaps.
Yeah.
It's just people.
Right. Well, we're going to get into some of the Rally Barbados talk next. We're just going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back.
Are we
Back
starting
to it.
what?
Yeah, we're back. So I guess what we should do is talk about Rally Barbados, and you were talking about those glory years, that 2015 through 2017, where you had a lot of international drivers. How did that all come about? The John Josephs, the Alfin Evans, and things like that.
Chris Meek,
which was before.
Well, so I said 2008, 2009 is when Chris came.
Yeah, that was earlier.
And that was fully intentional. So that was he was introduce some modern part. It was a very woke decision on the part of the club at that time. Was that we recognized that the event needed to have a larger profile, both locally and internationally. And for us, the way to do that would be to attract someone that we felt would give us that profile.
Yeah.
So we put together a package through some local sponsors here, and Chris came in and he won the rally in 2008 and 2009.
Listen, man, that will go down as one
And
of
he
my
was
absolute most
driving
favorites.
the Roger Hills.
Correct.
Old,
In 08.
Corolla.
Yeah, the
And then
Corolla,
in
yeah.
09, he drove a Subaru.
He drove the absolute shit out of that Corolla. I will never forget that. I've never seen anybody unfair a car like that. I mean, that sticks in my memory like nothing else. He really unfaired it.
Did he bring his Navi or did he have
Yeah.
somebody?
No.
He had his
Paul
he had his
Nagel
guy.
came.
Yep.
Right.
Who continued with him for years.
Right.
They've recently, only within the last 2 years, Seb Marshall is Chris's
His
current
take.
navigator.
Right.
Paul's currently navigating
For
Elfin Evans.
No. Craig Breen.
Craig Breen.
Green,
There you
right,
go.
who's got a
Nice.
seat, who did have a seat last.
He has a
this
seat
year.
now with Hyundai, and actually their return to the World Rally Championship, the two of them are entered as an official works entry.
There you
So
go.
Right.
That's great.
We're gonna get to that, I
Yeah.
think. So I want to hear your thoughts on some WRC talk. So it was growing obviously with meat, and then is that when the crowd levels were at the highest at that point? Would you say is that what?
No, not initially. I would say that, well, those years, yeah, we kind of went through a flat spot in the mid-2000s, I would say roughly. And then when Chris came, we then started to do some very different things. So we had that mad super special at Bushy Park,
Yes.
the Pre-Conco Bridge, and there was stuff that they were then doing the route, which was quite different. It's hard to believe it's almost, well, it is not almost, 20 years ago now. But that was very much the launch pad for some real good events during that time. 7, 08, 09, because Gary Gregg would have come here with his focus then as well with Monster sponsorship.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there was, and then it kind of, I wouldn't say it struggled, it kind of tapered off a bit then, and then it picked back up again. As I said, like 15, 16 with John Joseph and fellas coming and panting, and most of those guys then shifting. Paul Bird coming in his car. I mean,
Same Craig Breen came. No, Elfin Evans came in an
Elfin
R5.
came.
That was 2 years ago, though.
That was
Or
3 years ago. Yeah, that was like 16 or 17 is when he
Which
came.
was a huge coup. I mean, Elfin is now
Yeah, the
top.
amount of press that he brought.
Yeah.
I was going through that recently actually with when we announced that, and a number of different news organizations that carried that over the following 2 or 3 days was astonishing. And we've found that that's worked very well for us, is having, like, there's no, I was in the service area of Wales Rally GB 2 years ago, and I met with the clerk of the course at the time to discuss some things, and I was there to actually meet the Rally Safe guys from Australia. And it's incredible when I don't know any of these people, but when you actually, and I was there with Bex Williams going through the service areas, this is prior to, so there were no spectators around. It was Friday night, so there was nothing going on. Thursday night. And it's incredible when you meet these guys, like Latvala, and they'll have heard of our event. They all know about our event already.
Yeah.
As soon as you mention it, they go, oh yeah, that event. I heard about that event.
Crazy.
In the Caribbean, right? They all know about it. But all of that is a product, as I said, of those 10 or 15 years previous, whereby these very big name drivers would either associate themselves, come and see. Because don't forget, we actually had like Bjorn Voldegaard, who's
I remember that.
he came and competed. Didier Oriol came as a guest
Oriol?
one time.
Yeah.
He didn't compete, he just came as a guest.
Right.
Although
He
they
also,
gave him the keys to
he got the Corolla.
Corolla, which at the time had still belonged to a Trinidadian guy, who's
Right.
got clean on my head at the moment. Anyway,
He also did
John Powell.
Yes.
and he drove around Vaucluse and did
That
several
was
donuts,
hilarious.
and the crowd went
Yeah.
mad.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it all added towards what you're saying. And then I would have said that, yeah, we went through this incredible period between 15 and and to now. This year obviously was going to be probably one of the biggest highlights. And of course we had COVID.
Yeah. We're gonna get to this here in a
We'll get to
second,
that.
but I wanna backtrack 1 second because I think this bill. It seems as though Barbadians in general. I guess you could say the whole Caribbean, but Barbadians in particular seem to have this like never-ending thirst for motorsport, and it doesn't really matter. Although I suppose no, it appears to matter more than others. I was going to say that it doesn't matter whether it's track racing or rallying, but I think that's shifted a bit now because I still think, based on crowd and who turns up to events, that rallying seems to draw more crowd attention than track racing does right now. That could be for a number of different reasons. But there seems to be this never-ending thirst Bajans have for rallying, and especially when the Rally Club is able to bring in such huge international names. For us, we almost take it for granted because we get the chance to have these. Not only do we have incredible local talent, but we have these overseas competitors that come here with usually very good machinery and an endless supply of talent. And we get to see them compete on our roads. And there's not many people around the world that get to see that. And we're a little tiny rock in the Caribbean Sea.
It's actually incredible.
You're quite right. And it's bizarre. I find it bizarre. I find the whole dynamic bizarre. But, that's a bit how rallying is. So rallying it's a far more tight-knit, familial type environment than generally racing is. And I used to go to a lot of racing when I was at university in the UK. A lot. Almost every single weekend I'd be at Brands Hatch or Silverstone or Donington or Thruxton or just watching racing. And it's a very different dynamic. It's not that it's, people aren't friendly to one another. It's just a very different dynamic. And I find that the rallying fraternity is much closer or closely connected so that people talk with everybody. And if you know so-and-so, you'll know so-and-so. And there's no problem in being introduced to so-and-so. And people are very accessible.
Yeah. Talking about internationally as well.
Yeah.
Right. As an international community, not just Caribbean.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to throw some things out here that you all would not probably know. But for instance, for our anniversary event, we were in touch with Ari Vatanen. And just this came out of someone, and we were exchanging emails with the man about coming out and, being a guest person on the event and so on and so forth. And it was easy. It was like if, you'd known him your whole life and it was no problem. You're not dealing with it through kind of interpreters or agents or whatever. Yeah. This is the person. Similarly, Cam Block's slightly different. But Cam Block's it's just a phenomenon in terms of PR and media. And we knew that getting him here and doing that deal would have been a big deal. But you're talking about local guys and coming here. I mean, all these fellas wanted to happen was that spectators and competitors like to see him go up Stuart Sill on that and to see the Tour Drive car just put licks in him. Mm-hmm. That's it. Just licks. Yeah,
for sure, definitely. I mean, you want to talk about?
I want to talk about. Well, he mentioned Ken,
okay.
So I think it's time to ask the questions of how did that come about? Was it that they reached out? Was it you guys reached out? How does that come about for Bobby? I mean, so it was.
Let me just before that though.
Yeah.
Sure, this year Rally Barbados this is the 30th anniversary of Rally Barbados.
It's the 30th anniversary, so it would have been 35th. No.
35th. Did I get a number wrong?
31st running. No. The 30th anniversary was the 30th running of the event was 2019.
Okay.
The 30th anniversary, because of course you call anniversaries 1 year on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It was actually this year.
Right.
But
I knew it was a in quote special year.
Yeah,
it is.
If you're married, all of us are married, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Good to remember that.
Don't worry, Michelle will 100% not be watching this, so that's fine.
Yeah. And so your first anniversary is after 1 year.
Yes. That's, okay.
So it's just a strange quirk. We're reminded of it by and he's having sent most of the time Robin Bradford, who is a particular on these kind of things, and he's a bit as UK called anorak.
Okay.
So he keeps all the facts and figures and knows how these things work. But yeah, I mean, it was this year.
The point is, you guys had,
year.
and we know from back end dealings that the club and there was big plans for Rally Barbados this year, and it was lining up to be a very, very special event, and the little cherry on top of the cake was Ken Block is coming with Causey World Tour, and shit just went mad when this was
the
announced.
Escort. He was
Yeah.
Yeah, he's bringing the Escort.
The Causey World Tour.
They had reached out to us.
right.
I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah.
You reach. Give y'all, give Jockey Jacket. Y'all reach. Y'all have, and I know it's not just you, but you play a big part in this. But to spend so much time and effort over the last how many ever years building this Rally Barbados brand into what it is today, that you now have a global superstar like Ken Block and his team, because I'm sure he didn't message you, hey Neil, I want to come down. But
Right. But was it based off his schedule? Or he knew about, well, obviously he'd been here before through Rallycross.
Yes.
Was it the fact that he wanted to be here? It just worked perfectly with his schedule. Because I know he was in Mexico, and then he was due to come here, correct?
The scheduling was not really. It was, they identified the event as just good media. So that's just how they operate. I mean, there's like good backdrop, know about the event. The guy that runs his team, he's an English guy. And he knew about the event as well. So he would understand from being in that English, that well, it's a well-run event. I know these people aren't going to go here and it's going to be some, really chaotic nonsense where you see times 33 days later and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And safety-wise and so on and so forth. So yeah, he reached out to us and then it was a case of trying to make the deal work based on what he wanted.
Can you share some of that?
Well,
I appreciate you can't share everything, but
to tell you
just to
honestly,
give us a bit more insight into
it's interesting because I guess being in the business as you are, you understand what kind of a media machine he is, and you understand, okay, this guy is coming, but it really dawned on me it didn't really dawn on me until I actually saw the numbers, and it was like, okay, you're coming, how many people? So it's 26 people, and half of those is media. So half of those just film crew, this person,
Crazy,
that
right?
person.
The whole hoonigan.
Crazy.
So
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It literally is. It's the
Media
whole
crew.
machine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has like 7 or 8 guys just to work on the car.
Right, but the rest is...
Well, yeah, I
And
mean,
then, like,
his mechanics, the engineers are actually
It's
outnumbered
just crazy.
by the media. Because
Crazy.
for
let's
sure.
be fair, the hoonigan, it's a media...
It is a media
It's a
machine.
media company.
Definitely.
That's what, I mean, the
Then
racing
he was
is
coming here
decided.
with his wife and his 3 kids, so they were going to make a holiday out of it. So, and it fit in well to his schedule as well, like actually doing that, coming here for 2 weeks, making a holiday out of it.
That's the other thing. He was doing King of the Hill and Rally
I know.
Barbados.
Yes,
which not a lot of people knew.
And to tell you the honest truth, he even though I was dealing with it through his people, they were fairly easy. Like they were fairly easy to like, yeah, Ken will do that. That's no problem. We put forward. I mean, you saw the documents. They were quite detailed documents. We thought if we're going into this, we need to kind of spell out what it is we want him to do, and we need to do it professionally, well packaged. So it doesn't look as if we've just woken up out of bed and decided to hold a rally. So, and that got a good response. And I think he felt comfortable as he does. I mean, one of the guy that actually, his main kind of guy that I guess manages him, said, look, once we're not trying to over promise, Ken will over deliver. So don't ask, and he'll just stay there all night if he needs to, and don't worry about that part. And I generally get that, because I mean I had some interaction with him during when he was here for Rallycross.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean he spent an hour and a half, one afternoon just in the pits of Bush Park signing posters, and it was completely.
Yeah.
And I think you're quite right. Your comment earlier about Bajans are spoiled with this stuff. We kind of forget, and it's like when Lewis was here. You kind of forget, they're bumping him into the pits, and he might get out of a cart having just done some laps with some kids, and you kind of forget that when you see him on TV in an F1 environment, it's like people are running around like, second coming of Christ. And it's a bit like that. But when you're here, people just, and maybe that's what attracts people to it.
I think it is.
I think it is. I think we have this ability here where people don't fuss.
Exactly.
Right. There's no, like with the Rihanna, there's not that much fuss. They tend to let people act accordingly of how they want to.
I think,
Which I like.
Same.
I think they like it too. I think celebrities
definitely
genuinely like coming here.
Absolutely. But before one of the points you made earlier, I think is really important to make though, is that one of the reasons I think for the health of rallying here and the event, this is kind of a broader comment, and the reason again why somebody like Ken would reach out to us, I guess, and look here, and why we're having ongoing conversations the whole time with current WRC drivers some who are without a drive and some who do have a drive, wanting to come and compete here, is also the nature of local motorsport and the fact that it's solid and the fact that we do actually have a really enthusiastic, not only competing base, but sponsor base, as in support-wise, and spectator base. And that atmosphere thing and how you interact with locals and so on and so forth is a huge factor in all of this. Huge factor. You can go and rally anywhere. And certainly the stages here are not the best. I mean, I've been on much better stages than what we can offer here based on our size. Heaven forbid the state of the roads. I shouldn't even mention that. But ultimately, it is about the atmosphere. It's about, and the competing base. The fact that the guys that compete here are actually seriously good at what they do, not only in terms of car preparation, but driving. I mean, my idols growing up were people like Freddie Mac. I don't know if you ever heard it.
I know the name.
Run a workshop up behind us and used to have a Lotus twin cam Escort. So it's a Mark II with a Lotus engine in it. And he, as far as I'm concerned, Freddie Mac was God to me in the 80s. I mean, never mind my father was competing. It was Freddie Mac.
Yeah.
Is that based on driving style?
Driving
or what?
style,
Yeah.
the fact that this guy in this red Escort could take on and beat all comers, you know, in the early days of speed events in the 80s. And then before that, it was like, busy. Lincoln Waterman at Bushy Park back in the early 70s. But it's that competing base. It's actually having basically our own heroes and our own like strong performers.
Yeah.
Guys, listen, these are here could drive here. I'm not joking. You take and it's all the way down. It's not just Barry and Roger.
No, of course not. No.
It's people like Jamal Brathwaite and,
Right.
and I mean some of these guys. Honestly, these guys can pedal.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
I mean, who's your, if you could pick somebody now who you really like to follow in terms of driving style, who sticks out for you right now that competes?
Internationally?
No, I'm talking
Locally?
about, yeah.
I think we have a lot of talent here that's not recognized, and some guys who don't have the funds to do it.
That's
Right.
the hard part, man.
That's the hard part. I actually had this conversation recently with somebody, and there are a couple of people that have kind of slipped through the cracks that I would have loved to have seen in quicker, faster machinery. I mean, notwithstanding we're missing somewhere like Trevor Manning, for instance.
Yeah.
But Cody, Mark,
yeah.
listen to me.
Yeah.
It was fast, you hear?
Yeah.
Whitehead,
Alex.
listen to me. These are boys with
Yeah.
like a serious natural talent. Serious natural talent. Like Jeff Elliott natural talent kind of style. Justin Campbell, I think, is enormously talented. I would love to see Justin in an R5 car, actually. Love to see him
I
in
think
an R5
Justin
car.
would like to see himself in an R5
Yeah,
car
Justin would
too.
like to see himself in an R5 car.
Yeah,
Who wouldn't?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, touching on the R5, obviously this year, a lot of people have changed vehicles. I mean, I don't know how many we have now. I see Panson and
7
Ross
or-
one have
7 or
WRC
8.
Fiestas parked just here, down at Bushy Park. Is this a shift that you see? Obviously, it's in the rally world internationally, the shift towards the R5s, based on, I guess, cost and I don't know what else to do.
Affordable WRC
well, not
cars.
for us, but
Yeah.
internationally.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think that will do for the likes of Rally Barbados or just rallying in general?
It has been quite amazing actually seeing it. So we've seen more investment and development in rallying despite the economic situation. I'm not talking about currently as in the last 5 months because it's obviously an aberration. Prior to COVID than we have in 10 years. The investment in the same R5 platforms, which you're quite right, to write the check initially is eye-watering, but ultimately from everything we know, cars are inexpensive to run.
Yeah.
They are. And the development's done. So once you drive it and you don't prang it, the reality is it's tires and fuel, and it's up to the driver.
Yeah.
Rebuilds, but the rebuilds are, gearbox, suspension, all those drivetrain components and parts.
Yeah.
It's far more miles you can put on them than a WRC car,
Yes.
obviously.
Yeah.
And the replacement obviously is not insane. So where that goes, it really is quite incredible where it is now. Between that and the Bimmer Cup, which has been quite an astonishing thing.
I think honestly, that Bimmer Cup, those cars, those have to be that is the best bang for buck you can get there, right?
It
You're talking
is.
about 30,000 Bajan dollars, right?
Yeah.
And you have yourself a car, and you're now competing in a group with everybody else that has the exact same car as you. So I mean, this comes
More
back
or
to
less.
what, more or less. Okay, give or
They
take a
spend
little bit.
more money on suspension than others.
Fair enough.
But yeah.
Give or take a little bit.
Yeah.
They're a lot closer
Yeah.
than you would find in other groups.
No, for sure. So you have this, and it's that mix as well, which is so healthy. So you've got this incredible, essentially standard class, which is taken off and is doing very well from a competitive perspective. As in, the guys love driving them. I think promotional wise, there's more work to be done there, but driving and so on, top notch. And the whole experience. And it's brought guys back in. That had stopped.
Ian Warren, Neil Armstrong,
Yeah.
Michael Worm is now
yeah.
back.
Well, Neil a one-off.
I'm not
Or
sure
that
actually.
stick?
I'm not sure.
I don't know if that's his.
I'm not sure.
He's another person I'd see in an R5 car. My word, he would rock one. Anyway, I'm sure, again, same thing. I'm sure he would like to see himself in an R5. The R5 thing, obviously, yes, it's a major investment. But you're quite right. We now have 5 on the island, which will be competing. Another 2 regionally. So we have a class with 7 or 8 cars, which is extraordinarily healthy.
Yeah.
And then, in addition, you still have the quick 2-wheel drive cars knocking around, which, despite what everybody says about them, they are remarkable feats of engineering. The fact is, they bring the spectators out. They do bring the spectators out. And that, from a promotional aspect and from a promoter aspect, is fantastic, because you have this incredible, rich entry. And that's what the overseas journalists say when they come.
Yeah.
So that's one of the key things that we've followed up and tried to push over the last 4 or 5 years. Is actually not so much the getting the big name drivers to come, is big name media. And that's proved to be huge dividends for us. So we have WRC live crew here. We've got independent journalists and people who are following the event, writing about it, spreading the word. That is proved to be and when they come, that's the thing that blows them away.
Yeah.
It's atmosphere, crowd, and the level of participation and the breadth of the machinery.
Because I think I've seen a lot of articles in the UK talking about the homologation, the rules in the UK, which basically prohibit all of this, basically what we're doing. But how they're saying how amazing that this event really is, and everybody needs to come and do it, which I think is great. I want to touch on one thing first, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this. All these people buying R5s in this class, which is going to be incredible. Why Panton and Swan going the WRC route just to be quicker?
Yeah.
It's gotta be right. They just
But
if you
wouldn't
want
it
to
be
win.
amazing if they were all in the same class?
To some degree. I mean, again,
From a spectator point of view, that's what I want to see.
really,
Yes. Well, this is
I
what
want to see Panton and Swan against Sol. I want to
Listen,
see it in the same.
this is the same
against
point-
Maloney.
Exactly. This is the same point I was gonna make. I was gonna say that although I agree with you, some of the 2-wheel drive cars we have here are insane, and I've been fortunate enough to go in 1 or 2 of them, and they're even more insane when you get inside of them.
it's true.
But to me, that caliber of car has never really been fair, and I mean that in the sense of as a spectator or as a motorsport fan, it is always more fun to watch people race in equipment that is closer in terms of ability.
I think as a purist, maybe.
No, but I mean, hear me out.
We
You
might
see it
be
right now.
purists.
You see it. Maybe
That
we
might-
are.
maybe
But this
that's
is why
it.
I love Bimmer. This is why I love Bimmer Cup. This is why I love the idea of having so many R5s here now. And I suppose you could make the argument for WRC as well. But to me, I'm with James. I wish Swan and Daneskeet and Panton all had R5 cars. I know R5 is the top of the mountain as far as 4-wheel drive cars here, and they're all competing on that platform because that is far more exciting. Now you have 3
We have
WRC
WRC
cars
right?
and a bunch
Which
of
will be Dane
R5s.
in the Subaru, and then the 2 Rob Swan and Panton.
And to me, it's like, okay, cool, fine, but how much better would it be if we had 11 R5s?
Well,
It might happen anyway. Well,
Dude, I'm just saying that
I
to me,
think-
like as a purist, whatever. But
you tell me your side.
well, I think from a club perspective, obviously we did look into that.
Yeah.
3 years ago, the club looked at going on a road of basically making the R5 class the pinnacle in terms of our regulations in Barbados Rally Club. And
that probably wasn't a very fun conversation.
well, it went out there and there was lots of knocking around, lots of kicking around. People got on board, then people changed their minds, and there was 180s. But the club eventually decided that, as we've done for 50 odd years, to let water find its own level. You know what? We're not going to basically, put regulations or regulate against XYZ. We're going to keep the classes, and where it goes, where it goes. If WRC dies off and no one has the money to invest in it, then fair enough. That's what will happen. And essentially, I think it's been the right decision rather than basically regulating that R5 is
Fair
the top
enough.
class, because it does allow us to have a sharp end, which at the moment anyway can be a place where anything up to 2016 in terms of WRC car can come and compete. And there are a lot of them knocking around.
Yeah, there are.
And there are a lot of clubman people still driving them. I mean, so for the event this year, which is obviously being postponed, and now we won't see the level of entry that we were
Normally
going to
we
see
get.
outside of COVID. We're going to miss at least 2 of those cars, 2016 cars, so the 1600 WRC cars. Possibly 3 that we would have had. So we would have likely have had an entry of 6 or 7
Okay.
at the sharp end, but we would have had 14 R5 cars.
Yeah, you see, that is the money.
What with the series, the FIA series that
Right.
we had attracted,
Yes.
because they were bringing another 4.
Would have been sick.
And Citroens and all kinds of stuff. So it's I still go back to I like the polyglot of stuff. I like the fact that there's lots of different things. I actually do like the fact that these guys have invested in the absolute sharp end and these cars. So
you're
we build to see them.
talking massive amounts of money
Mm-hmm.
here. I mean, right. We're gonna take a break and we're gonna do our last 10 minutes
Perfect.
right now. Okay, cool. And we're back.
Get my head around that.
So,
We're back.
Yeah.
obviously with the postponement of Rally Barbados this year, we do have dates though, correct?
Yes.
So, you want to share with us what those dates
Yeah,
are?
31st of October and 1st of November. So Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
No more Friday night.
No more Friday night. So
Okay.
Reasoning?
reasoning is actually mostly economic.
Okay.
It costs a lot to run the event, basically almost the same as almost a full day to run it on a Friday night, despite fast.
I was going to say, just as a quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't think, and I mean, maybe we take this for granted again because we're involved on the back end a little bit as well.
I know
but
where you're going.
I don't think people understand how much Rally Barbados cost.
$1 million
Oh my God.
It costs just south of
There
$1
you
million
go.
to put on.
You know what I mean? That's significant, man.
Yeah, I don't like thinking about it too much.
It's quite a feat.
I don't like thinking about it too much. It scares the bejesus out of me, to be quite honest, when I realize it's that kind of money.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So
Nah,
that's
nah,
Rally
it's
Barbados
all good.
2020.
It's all good.
No Friday night. We're starting
But
Saturday
that's-
morning.
But that's obviously, I'm just going back to the money there. That's obviously your credit to your own success because surely it didn't start that way.
No.
Surely it's because of how big this event has gotten.
Yeah,
Because of the Rally Club.
I mean, it's a real production you all put on.
To tell you the truth, we've added on stuff. So the event itself, we fine-tuned, and that's come through experience. We didn't get it right the first time. Not for hell. The story I told earlier about Jeff Avell, my stage commander's moving entire stage crews to do the next stage. So, yeah, I mean, just in terms of scheduling, getting better with running, the adeptness of our marshals, timing crews, safety on the event itself, all of those things. And we haven't done this by ourselves either. We've been smart. So we brought in people who've assessed the event. Sue Sanders, who is at one of the FIA safety reps and is actually the FIA safety officer, I believe, for Wales Rally GB, like the primary person. She came in and assessed our event, I think it's 15th, the 15th, the 14th, 16th. And she wrote us a big, long report, what we need to fix. And she gave us like a 7 out of 10, but there were things you need to do. And that's been instrumental. But yeah, Friday night. So Friday night we've decided, yeah, let's go go back to essentially what the event was actually in its early days, which is a 2-day rally, 19 special stages, Saturday and Sunday. Not sure whether Saturday night will have any night stages yet.
Come on, bring a night stage.
Not sure. It depends when we start in the morning and what we have.
I love a night stage.
Probably into Bushy Park would be the best for that.
The inclusion of the circuits is still a question mark. What we have, so we had essentially to throw out the rally from May. So we've reset a rally. But in doing so, what it's done is provided us with some opportunities. One, because we anticipate a lower entry, because we won't get, based on the uncertainty around COVID, we won't get the depth of clubman support that we would out of Europe. Mm-hmm. We are getting some entries, which is great. And they're actually quite high-profile entries, which, again, is great, but not the depth in numbers.
If you had to guesstimate, how many roughly entries do you expect for this year?
Between 50 and 60.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything you're working on that's...
There are a few things, yeah. But I think the strength really lies, and it's important I say it, the strength actually really lies in the local regional. And the fact that, based on what we've just been discussing, the fact that alone is actually quite astonishing.
Yeah.
If we get 1 or 2 more guys into the mix that are on the sharp end, then great. But in actuality, a local regional entry based on what we have on the ground here now, and who might come from Turks and Caicos or Cayman or so on, it's actually very strong. It is a strong entry. So that's roughly numbers that I would expect. But the interesting thing about that from an organizing perspective, and of course that's a big hat I wear now, is that it allows us to do things based literally on room. So we don't have to look for trying to line up 100 cars at a start. We're dealing with half that number. We don't have to use this stage because we can't get through it in time to accommodate this church or this village, which we do take into account. We can now do it in half the time because we're dealing with half the number, or roughly. It's about 30% less, what I anticipate. So I think this year's event is actually, as a competitor, competitors are going to find it very, very different. Very different. We're doing one very big thing, which people, in fact, I have one competitor who knows of this particular plan on the organizing committee, and he still can't get his head around it. He's like, all right, I can't get my head around that. Like, okay. and it's such a fundamental shift that I think in itself, even that's going to be interesting. But we've only been able to do this through, as I said, like taking a real critical look at the event and thinking, okay, well, look, we've got a one-off year here.
What can we do to
what
make
can
it?
we do? Without being silly about it, without trying to undo an event which generally is reasonably successful.
Is this a new stage?
I was going to ask.
New stage, yeah, there's a new stage.
No spoilers on that?
A lot of people, I know I wasn't here for this, right? But a lot of people always say the Simpson Motors special is like the be-all and end-all of rally.
It was good.
That was madness.
It was good, though.
That was madness.
Right.
That super special. The one I mentioned earlier, that bridge, Uncle Bridge.
That was good too.
Nuts. And of course, the one which gives me the most stress as an organizer, which I presided over and literally said we should do this, was a Friday night start from Warren's, and that stage up in the north. The one that started in Sailor Gully and finished at Diamond Court.
Yes.
Listen to me, right? I'm not sure if I'm still over the stress involved with that Friday night, 3 years later or 4 years later. And at the time, it was like, I can't explain to you how much stress. There were we made mistakes. So there were certain things that we did not anticipate. One, okay, you're holding a stage at one venue. How many people do you think will show up? Well, I didn't really figure that the entire Rally Barbados following population would show up on one stage, which posed a problem.
You should know your spectators.
Well, this is it. So, but I thought, well, maybe it's starting late, starting 9 o'clock on a Friday night. You know, how many people we rating get? 2,000-3,000 people? Joke. 3-4 times that on one stage. So that posed a massive problem. But now, when I think back on it, it's like with those rose tinted goggles, it's like that is the sickest stage we've ever run. Yeah. Like without any competitors say so as well. I mean, not to mention the fact that Jeffrey Pannon put about 15 seconds in the many first stage alone. Yeah. Because it was unknown, you see, there were large chunks of it that people had not driven to death. And Dane Skeet put a tremendous 10-second lead in the entire two-wheel drive brigade on that night. That was separate men from the boys kind of scenario and girls. But so there are elements of that we'd like to try and replicate in some ways. So yes, there's a stage on Saturday which is mental.
Are you bringing back Turner's Hall?
No, man, Turner's Hall terrible.
The road is a mess. It is a mess.
And that's a massive challenge. And the two biggest challenges for us as route setters and planners now is condition of the roads and timing. So when we can run stages, because we do pay huge attention to local residents, things like churches, when they actually operate, when they don't. And we have a really good rapport with communities in and around stages. Generally, most complaints we get, we've got them down, not pat, but we do our best to minimize them, is with actually traveling public that don't know it's on. It's not actually do with the residents themselves. But the event itself, as I said, 9 stages Saturday, 10 Sunday. It should be good, man. I'm actually looking forward to it.
So are we.
Listen, man, I was going to say, I think that...
I'm looking forward to this weekend. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Right. So, this weekend they got rally going on?
Yeah, we got a test stage Saturday afternoon. And we have a joint event with the Motor Club on
That's
Sunday.
why Panton is here.
Yep. And it's going to be the first, obviously, against the clock event. And it got a lot of fights.
So where's that running? Tell the people where that's running.
So Saturday afternoon is a test stage at Orange Hill. It's very short, 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers. But the idea behind that, which is what we actually had in place back in March for COVID, BC.
Before COVID.
You love it.
Was to try and give the fellas an opportunity, particularly with new machinery, because there's been such massive investment and guys refettling things, an opportunity to kind of tweak their cars before they really had to go against the clock in a full kind of timed environment. So we're doing that Saturday afternoon from 2 o'clock. It should be good.
How many entries?
I don't know, actually.
You know, because it's
These
not.
fellas leave the entries the last possible
Right.
minute. Entries close tomorrow at 4. So.
And everybody will enter at 3:55.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then Sunday, the stage is actually quite quick. It's a venue that Motor Club had chosen from before. So both these venues, permissions had gone in for already to the ministry. So to kind of change them is tricky. So we stuck with what we have. And basically that is running from Henley, so it's near Woodland, up through past Duck Pond, past Ashford, and then going out on the better road towards Cherry Grove and finishing.
Okay.
So it's
quick.
It's quick. It's fast stage.
Yeah.
There are going to be a couple of chicanes in there for sure.
Is it running both directions?
Both directions.
Good.
There are a couple of chicanes in both directions at key points for safety reasons. But it's going to be interesting because Saturday, actually, we're going to do timing on Saturday. We decided that we want to do timing to kind of see where everybody's at. But it's not for points. But it's going to be two very different kind of things because Saturday is very bumpy and twisty.
Yeah.
And then Sunday is not. It's very quick and open and flowing and so on and so forth. So I don't know, we'll see. It's almost as if now, though, having enjoyed the break, I'll be honest with you, from the rallying and the organization and so on, it's almost as if, all right, well,
yeah, no, we need to see
we need
some
a rally
cars.
now in September.
It's been too long.
Yeah,
It has,
People are getting itchy feet.
Yeah, actually, Barry Mears told me only yesterday because I asked him. He said, "Do you think we get spectators out on Saturday, Sunday?" He went, "What?"
Yeah.
He said, "Man, everybody bumping to say that they're ready.
So.
They're coming out."
Yeah.
So
All you have to do is go to Bushy Park and see the people going for just the test days.
Yeah.
Trying to get a bunch of spectators up there.
it's true.
All the time. We're looking forward to it.
Same.
Neil, I want to say, total pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much.
I feel like we could have him on like 10 times.
At least.
I know.
Well, I'll come back when I can give you some more details for RB20.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
We'll have you back, and then we can hear some more stories about the good old days.
Oh my word! Listen, man, we're living through the good days.
It's
now.
true.
People forget that, right? Honestly, you sometimes get kind of blinkered by the fact that, listen, actually, where we are now and rallying on this is actually fairly good.
It's true.
Yeah, it may not be as wild as some of the. Yeah, but anyway.
True.
We'll leave it there.
Perfect. All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you very much,
Cheers.
Neil.
See ya.
Signing out.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.